Have you ever felt like your own family saw you as nothing but a personal ATM? In this powerful true story, I spent years silently supporting my family financially, from mortgage payments to college tuition, medical bills, and everyday expenses, only to be betrayed in the worst way imaginable. After my parents openly announced they would leave all their assets to my siblings, everything changed. When I finally stood up for myself, my brother retaliated by destroying my home. Forced into a heartbreaking legal battle, I revealed the shocking truth to the world and finally reclaimed my dignity. Join me as I share how I overcame financial abuse, toxic relationships, and betrayal, finding my voice, true happiness, and genuine self-worth. If you're dealing with toxic family members or financial manipulation, this story is exactly what you need to hear. Hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications to never miss out on empowering stories like this. Comment below if you've ever experienced something similar, and let's support each other. I never imagined the moment I'd discover I was nothing more than a living ATM would happen at a cozy Thanksgiving dinner table. I pulled my car into my parents' driveway, shutting off the engine with a sigh. The autumn air had turned crisp, leaves scattered on the ground like forgotten promises. Sitting there, staring at the familiar white-painted house I'd helped save from foreclosure 5 years ago, a soft tension knotted in my stomach. Still, I tried to shake it off. This was family after all. Inside, the scent of roasted turkey and pumpkin pie wrapped around me, warm and welcoming. Mom greeted me at the door, her smile perfectly practiced. "You're finally here, Ellen," she said, pressing a quick, cool kiss on my cheek. No hug, as usual. "Your brothers arrived hours ago." "I'm glad," I replied quietly, stepping in and handing her a bottle of wine. She glanced at the label, satisfied, then hurried back to the kitchen, leaving me standing there, feeling oddly out of place in my own childhood home. My father sat at the head of the table, in his usual commanding position. "Well, if it isn't our successful daughter," he boomed, half teasing, half earnest. "Good to see you too, Dad," I smiled back, suppressing the fleeting pang of unease at his choice of greeting. Dinner began with laughter and small talk. Stories of Matt and Jake's minor accomplishments that my parents celebrated as monumental. Matt had finally held a job for longer than 2 months, and Jake had managed to stay enrolled in college after 3 failed semesters' tuition I'd quietly paid without acknowledgement. "So, Ellen," Jake said, leaning forward, a cocky grin on his face. "Still climbing corporate ladders? What's next, CEO?" There was a hint of mockery hidden beneath his friendly tone, but I smiled calmly. "Not quite yet, but I'm happy." Dad raised an eyebrow. "Well, you know, sweetheart, with all your success, sometimes I wonder if money even means anything to you anymore." The comment stung, oddly pointed, and I paused, holding my fork midair. Something about his voice felt sharper than usual. I swallowed hard. "It means stability, Dad, for all of us." My father chuckled softly, leaning back in his chair, exchanging glances with my mother in a way that sent chills down my spine. "Speaking of stability," he began, clearing his throat, "your mother and I have something important to announce." My pulse quickened instinctively. Important announcements in this family rarely boded well for me. My mother glanced quickly at Matt and Jake, a proud smile lighting her face. "We've decided that the house and all our savings will go to your brothers, Ellen. Matt and Jake still need our support. You've made it clear you don't need anything from us, financially speaking." The room went quiet. My brothers avoided my gaze, suddenly intensely interested in their mashed potatoes. I stared at my parents, searching their faces for a punchline that never came. The silence stretched unbearably. "You decided what?" My voice was quiet, steadier than the hurricane inside my chest. "Did you forget who kept the bank from taking this house 5 years ago?" My mother gave a dismissive wave, as though I were bringing up an insignificant detail. "You did that voluntarily, Ellen. We never asked you." My chest tightened painfully. Years of late nights at the office, skipped vacations, endless financial transfers, all casually erased by a single indifferent sentence. I suddenly felt small, the table too vast, my family impossibly distant. "Don't take it personally, Ellen," my father interjected calmly, cutting into his turkey as if nothing had changed. "You always said money isn't important to you." "I never said my feelings weren't," I responded softly, fighting to keep my voice even. "Have you ever stopped to think about that?" My mother sighed dramatically, eyes rolling toward the ceiling. "Here we go again, always playing victim. You should be happy for your brothers. They haven't had your opportunities." I sat there silently, rage and sadness tangling into a messy knot deep in my chest. After everything, I realized my sacrifices had merely fed a beast that would never be satisfied. "I see," I finally said, forcing a calmness into my tone that I didn't feel. I stood, the scraping of my chair piercing the uncomfortable silence. "Excuse me." "Don't be dramatic," my father called after me, annoyance rather than concern coloring his voice. Ignoring him, I walked quickly toward the door, the familiar hallway suddenly narrow and suffocating. Outside, the cold air slapped against my skin, stinging my eyes with unfallen tears. As I sank into my car, hands trembling slightly on the steering wheel, I realized the truth I'd avoided for years. I was a convenient checkbook, an emotional placeholder rather than a beloved daughter. I started the engine, desperate to put distance between myself and the illusion I'd clung to for too long. The house receded in my rearview mirror, its warm lights mocking the cold truth beneath. I drove into the night, the empty streets mirroring the hollowness growing inside me. How had I let this happen? How many times had I justified their indifference, convinced myself it was love hidden beneath a rough exterior? At a red light, I glanced at my reflection in the rearview mirror. My face was composed, calm, but behind that mask was someone breaking into pieces, someone desperately trying to make sense of a love she'd imagined rather than received. In that lonely drive home, one brutal fact crystallized inside me. I had spent a lifetime loving people who never loved me back. And for the first time, I was ready to face what that truly meant. Back home, I sat alone in my living room, the room cloaked in silence and shadow. My eyes fell upon the carefully arranged photos on the wall, snapshots of family vacations, graduations, and birthdays. Each one suddenly felt staged, an illusion of warmth that masked years of quiet exploitation. I picked up my phone, thumb hovering hesitantly over the screen. Despite everything, an instinctual part of me still yearned to call my mother, to ask if she understood the damage she'd just done. But I knew it was pointless. Instead, my finger traced absent circles on the darkened screen as memories flooded my mind, vivid and relentless. I remembered clearly that day 5 years ago when the foreclosure notice arrived at my parents' doorstep. I'd been the first they called, their voices frantic, frightened. Without hesitation, I'd emptied my savings, paid off their mortgage, secured the roof over their heads. I remembered the brief phone call afterward. "Thank you, Ellen," my father had said curtly, as if acknowledging an overdue debt. "We appreciate the help." There was no warmth, no tenderness, just a formal acknowledgement, a transaction completed. I brushed it aside then, told myself it was just his pride speaking, that he was uncomfortable needing my help. But then there were other moments, smaller, yet just as telling, like Jake's tuition fees last year. My mother had casually mentioned he'd gotten into trouble academically again and might lose his place at college. Without waiting to be asked, I wired the payment immediately, feeling an odd sense of obligation and hope that this would finally earn their approval. Jake never thanked me. Neither did my parents. Or when Matt crashed his car after a drunken night out and called me at 2 a.m, hysterical and scared. I drove across town, paid for repairs, and quietly covered the damages to avoid any legal trouble. He'd promised repayment, of course, but the promises faded quickly, replaced by his usual entitled silence. Each memory cut deeper, stripping away the illusions I'd carefully maintained. How had I failed to see the pattern? How had I managed to convince myself these acts were born from genuine family bonds rather than sheer manipulation? Standing up restlessly, I moved toward the bookshelf, fingers brushing across the spines of books I'd never had time to read, always caught up in working overtime, chasing promotions. Not because I loved the corporate climb, but because every pay raise meant another lifeline I could throw my family's way. My gaze fell onto an unopened envelope hidden between the pages of an old novel. Carefully, I pulled it out, recognizing my own handwriting. It was a birthday card I'd written to my father 3 years ago, the edges now slightly yellowed. My heart dropped as the memory resurfaced. I'd put a generous check inside as a birthday gift, excitedly waiting by the phone for days afterward, hoping for a call, a thank you, anything that showed my father appreciated my gesture. It never came. 2 weeks later, I finally called him, anxiety twisting inside me. His voice was calm, almost bored. "Oh yes, we got it," he had said flatly. "Your mother deposited it. Anyway, how's work?" I hadn't realized it at the time, but that brief conversation had silently crushed something vital within me. Yet I'd forced myself to ignore it, to pretend it didn't matter, to keep believing that family love was there, buried beneath layers of emotional awkwardness. But tonight, in the stark quiet of my home, reality forced itself upon me, undeniable and brutal. I felt the weight of every sacrifice I'd made, each gift, each act of rescue, as heavy, invisible chains I'd willingly forged myself. My phone buzzed suddenly, startling me. I glanced down, feeling a pang of dread at my mother's name glowing on the screen. After a brief hesitation, I answered, "Ellen," her voice crisp and cold. "Your father and I are very disappointed in how you handled dinner tonight." My breath caught, but I stayed silent, letting her continue. "It was very embarrassing," she continued sharply. "You've really upset your brothers. It feels as though you've forgotten your responsibility to this family." A bitter smile curved my lips. Responsibility. That word again, always applied to me, never to them. "I'm sorry you feel that way," I replied softly, amazed at the calmness in my voice. "But maybe for once, you might consider my feelings too." There was a silence on the other end, thick with unspoken judgments. "Don't play the martyr, Ellen. It's not a good look," she snapped finally. "If you're going to behave this way, maybe it's better you don't visit for Christmas. It would spare everyone unnecessary drama." She hung up before I could respond. The sudden silence felt deafening. I lowered the phone, fingers shaking slightly. Strangely, instead of feeling hurt, I felt clarity. Painful, burning clarity. I had always known, deep inside, but tonight forced me to confront it fully. My family had never truly loved me, not for who I was. They loved only the security I provided. I was valuable only as long as I remained useful, convenient, silent. Slowly, deliberately, I deleted her missed calls, blocked her number, and placed my phone face down on the table. Tonight was a turning point. A line drawn clearly between who I had been and who I would become. For the first time, I was ready to acknowledge what I'd known all along. I deserved more than conditional love. And now I intended to claim it. The morning sunlight streamed into my room, casting golden lines across the empty side of my bed. Sleep had been restless, dreams haunted by echoes of my mother's cold dismissal. Sitting up slowly, I felt a heavy numbness settle into my bones. I glanced at my phone, automatically reaching for it out of habit, but stopped midway, pulling back my hand. It was no use checking. No message would come, at least not the kind I wished for. I was tired, emotionally exhausted from years of hoping, of silently pleading for recognition. My mother's final words rang in my ears. "Don't play the martyr, Ellen." Martyr. I hated the sting of that word, the dismissive contempt behind it. But had I not willingly allowed myself to be sacrificed over and over again, hoping each new sacrifice might finally earn their love? The kitchen felt colder than usual. As I brewed coffee, my thoughts drifted to countless mornings like this. Rushing to work, driven by the desperate need to earn more, to provide, to give, always give. Each paycheck had quietly become another attempt to secure a fleeting acknowledgement from my family. Sipping the bitter coffee, I opened my laptop, my fingers moving mechanically, logging into my bank account. Staring at the screen, the numbers blurred slightly as I scrolled through months, years of transactions. Mortgage payments, tuition fees, medical expenses, car repairs, each transfer silently listed, each figure neatly aligned, representing love that had never been reciprocated. A lump formed in my throat as I calculated the total in my head, a painful realization dawning. Over $30,000 in just a few years, given without hesitation, accepted without gratitude. I truly am just a walking ATM, I thought bitterly, the taste of coffee suddenly turning sour. Feeling restless, I closed my laptop and walked to the living room window, looking out onto the quiet street. A woman passed by, holding a child's hand, their laughter distant yet sharp enough to pierce the silence of my home. My heart clenched suddenly, a deep longing for the simple, unconditional connection I'd never truly known. I picked up my phone again, fingers hovering uncertainly before I dialed my mother's number, already knowing how the conversation would unfold. She answered on the third ring, her tone clipped, cold. "Ellen, have you come to your senses yet?" "I called to let you know something important," I said, voice steady despite the trembling inside. "I've decided it's best I stop providing financial support to the family." A stunned silence followed. For once, I'd surprised her. "Ellen, what nonsense is this?" Her voice sharpened immediately, laced with anger. "You're seriously going to abandon your family because your feelings got hurt?" "I'm not abandoning anyone," I replied calmly, surprising myself with my composure. "I just can't keep pretending that paying bills is the same as being loved." She scoffed dismissively. "If you truly loved us, you wouldn't keep score." "That's just it, Mom," I whispered, voice barely audible. "Love isn't supposed to be transactional. You taught me that, ironically enough." "Well, it's clear you've already made your decision," she snapped harshly. "I hope you realize what you're doing to this family." Her line went dead abruptly, leaving me standing alone, the phone pressed tightly against my ear. Her words lingered, sharp and accusing, yet this time they didn't hold the same power over me. A strange calmness settled into my heart, a painful clarity I'd avoided for far too long. I had never been their daughter, just their resource, a source of funds and favors. Love had been an illusion I'd desperately wanted to believe in, a mirage I'd chased for years without questioning its reality. But now the mirage had shattered completely. In its wake stood the undeniable truth of my own worth, clear and demanding acknowledgement. I was more than their convenience, more than the numbers on a screen. Slowly lowering the phone, I let out a long, steady breath, feeling the heavy chains of obligation loosen slightly around my chest. It hurt, deeply and profoundly, but in that pain I found something I hadn't felt in years. Freedom. Today marked the end of living life as a walking ATM. Today I would start living for myself. 2 weeks passed since my call with my mother. 2 weeks of silence, a fragile calm broken only by the quiet hum of my life trying to reset itself. Work provided a welcome distraction, but each night returned me to the same emptiness, reminding me of the sudden void left by my decision. Then, one evening, while I sat quietly reading, a loud knock shattered the stillness of my home. My pulse quickened, a nervous tension gnawing itself in my chest. Setting the book aside, I moved cautiously to the door, glancing through the peephole. Matt stood on the porch, shoulders stiff, face flushed with anger. My heartbeat quickened instinctively. a shadow of apprehension crawling up my spine. Taking a deep breath, I opened the door just enough to face him. "What do you want, Matt?" I asked calmly, though my voice trembled slightly. "What do I want?" His laugh came out harsh, almost manic. "Are you kidding me, Ellen? I came here because you've completely screwed up our family." His voice rose, echoing harshly into the quiet street. Neighbors' curtains twitched, and embarrassment flushed my cheeks. "Keep your voice down," I urged softly. "Come inside if you want to talk." He stormed into my living room, pacing erratically, fists clenched at his sides. He turned suddenly, eyes narrowed accusingly. "You think you can just stop supporting us after all these years? You're acting like some spoiled brat because Mom and Dad hurt your feelings? Grow up." His words sliced sharply, but I stood my ground, determined not to buckle beneath his familiar manipulation. "Matt," I replied, holding his gaze steadily, "this isn't about hurt feelings. I can't keep pouring my life and money into a family that doesn't respect or care about me." "You owe us," he snapped back, jabbing a finger toward my chest, rage clouding his face. "You wouldn't have anything if it weren't for family." "You mean family wouldn't have anything if it weren't for me?" I corrected sharply, surprised at my own strength. "I've done more than enough." His face reddened further, his voice dropping to a threatening whisper. "You'll regret this, Ellen." My throat tightened. "Please leave," I said, holding the door open wider, heart racing as I stood firm. He stormed out, slamming the door so violently behind him that the house shook. My pulse throbbed painfully as I sank onto the sofa, fingers trembling. I could hear his car speed away, tires screeching on asphalt. I sat in stunned silence, heart heavy with realization. This was more than a temporary fight. This was the breaking point. The moment I fully understood the magnitude of my choice. Minutes passed, heavy and slow. Finally, with a shaking breath, I got up and locked the door securely, bolting out more than just Matt. I was sealing away the life I'd always known, the person I'd always been. The silence afterward felt strangely liberating. It was as though a storm had passed, leaving a tense but profound clarity behind. I couldn't undo what had happened. I couldn't retreat now, even if I wanted to. Matt had drawn a clear line in the sand. My family saw me as nothing more than their safety net, a net they'd violently fight to keep in place. But tonight, as painful as it was, I felt something else rising beneath the hurt and fear, a fierce sense of dignity, of resolve. I'd always known this day might come, but I'd never imagined feeling relief alongside the grief. No turning back now. This was my point of no return. This was where Ellen, the walking ATM, finally disappeared. This was where I would finally reclaim my life. 2 days after Matt stormed out of my house, I woke to an unsettling quietness. Sunlight streamed peacefully through my bedroom curtains, but something felt off. A strange tension lingered in the air, prickling at my senses. Stepping into the kitchen, I paused, hearing nothing but the faint ticking of the wall clock. I started my coffee pot and glanced outside, freezing instantly as my breath caught sharply in my throat. My front yard was unrecognizable. Flower beds ripped apart, flowers shredded and tossed carelessly onto the driveway. The mailbox was lying on its side, smashed beyond repair. Shattered ceramic from garden pots scattered across the sidewalk, jagged pieces gleaming in the morning sun like shards of broken promises. My heart thumped painfully in my chest. Anger, fear, betrayal, all swirled together inside me, each fighting to dominate my reaction. Hands shaking, I opened the front door slowly, stepping outside barefoot into the chill morning air. The vandalism felt deeply personal. Each destroyed object carefully chosen. Flowers I'd painstakingly planted last spring. The mailbox I'd painted myself after buying my first home. Every broken fragment screamed contempt, the cruel handiwork of someone who knew exactly how to hurt me. Matt's words echoed harshly in my mind. "You'll regret this, Ellen." I knew instantly who was responsible. A rush of cold dread coursed through me. It was one thing to argue, to scream insults, another entirely to threaten and act out. This was a line crossed, a deliberate act of intimidation. Matt's rage had spilled into my private sanctuary. Feeling exposed and vulnerable, I quickly scanned the neighborhood. My neighbor across the street stood silently on his porch, staring at the wreckage, shaking his head slowly, a look of concern and maybe judgment etched on his face. Humiliation tightened in my stomach. My family's dysfunction had finally leaked into public view. I walked slowly back inside, closing and locking the door. Grabbing my phone, I hesitated briefly, fingers trembling as I dialed 911. The dispatcher answered calmly, and I found my voice sounding unfamiliar, steady, but strained as I explained the situation. Within minutes, a police car pulled into my driveway, lights quietly flashing. The officer who approached was calm, methodical, taking notes, snapping photos, documenting the damage. He asked if I had any suspects, and I reluctantly gave Matt's name, guilt and sadness intertwining with my resolve. Family loyalty had long been a burden, one I was finally releasing. "Do you want to press charges?" the officer asked, watching me closely. I hesitated, heart pounding fiercely, aware this decision marked yet another irreversible step away from my past. But seeing the shattered pieces of my life scattered on my lawn, the clarity came swiftly. "Yes," I answered firmly, the word echoing with finality. "I have to." He nodded understandingly, jotting it down. "We'll be in touch." When the police car finally drove away, I stood alone amid the wreckage. A heavy emptiness settled over me, tempered by quiet strength. I was done retreating, done sacrificing myself to shield a family who saw me only as a resource. Yet deep inside, grief lingered painfully, mourning the family bond I once believed existed. This wasn't how I'd imagined reclaiming my life would feel. Painful, lonely, but strangely liberating. As I bent down, carefully gathering the broken shards of my flower pots, tears blurred my vision. But these weren't tears of regret, they were tears of release. Each shard felt symbolic, fragments of illusions I'd allowed myself to hold on to for far too long. My phone buzzed abruptly, startling me. A text from an unknown number flashed on the screen. "You just made the biggest mistake of your life, Matt." I stared at the threat, heart quickening again, realizing I was now facing something deeper, darker than I had anticipated. Defiance had a price, and Matt clearly intended to make me pay. Fear tugged at my resolve, whispered doubts creeping in. Was this freedom worth it? Could I withstand whatever storm was coming? But even as doubt pressed heavily upon me, something stronger stirred within determination. Matt's threat only underscored the truth of my choice. I wasn't fighting merely for financial independence or respect. I was fighting for myself, for my dignity and self-worth. I blocked the number, deleted the message, and turned my gaze upward, letting the cool breeze dry the last traces of my tears. Matt could break my possessions, but he couldn't break me. Not anymore. 3 weeks later, the morning of the court hearing arrived. I woke long before sunrise, anxiety twisting painfully in my stomach. Outside, a fine drizzle painted everything in muted shades of gray, reflecting exactly how I felt. I dressed carefully in subdued colors, mindful of the quiet dignity I hoped to project, though inwardly I felt anything but dignified. Arriving at the courthouse early, I found myself pacing anxiously in the lobby, the cold marble floors amplifying each of my restless steps. A deep breath steadied me momentarily as I noticed my parents walking through the entrance, their faces rigid, clearly displeased at being summoned. My mother glanced at me briefly, a look of barely contained disgust in her eyes, before turning sharply away. My father's expression was unreadable, but the set of his jaw spoke volumes. They settled on the opposite side of the waiting area, placing a deliberate distance between us. My heart sank slightly. Part of me still hoped, Irrationally, they'd realize their mistake. Matt arrived soon after, arrogance emanating from every step. He shot me a contemptuous glare, smirking slightly, as though convinced he would easily evade consequences once again. A courthouse employee finally called our case. I entered the small courtroom, my heart thumping painfully as I took my seat, eyes fixed forward. Beside me sat my attorney, a calm, reassuring presence. Across from us, Matt and my parents sat stiffly, visibly irritated by the mere inconvenience of being there. "All rise," the bailiff announced as the judge entered, his solemn expression immediately commanding respect. The room quieted instantly. As the hearing began, my lawyer stood confidently, outlining the events of that night, the vandalism, the threats, and presenting clear, photographic evidence of the damage. When Matt's turn came, he leaned forward with calculated calmness, his voice smooth and practiced. "Your Honor, this is simply a family misunderstanding that my sister is blowing entirely out of proportion. Ellen has always been overly dramatic." "Overly dramatic?" My attorney interjected calmly, producing printed transcripts of Matt's threatening text messages. "Is this overly dramatic?" Matt's smug composure faltered, his eyes widening slightly. My parents shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The judge raised an eyebrow, examining the evidence carefully. My attorney continued steadily. "Your Honor, Ellen has provided extensive financial support to her family for years, over $33,000 documented through bank records here." She handed the judge a file. "She ceased financial aid recently, prompting retaliation from her brother." The judge flipped through the evidence slowly, absorbing the detailed transactions payments for mortgages, college tuition, medical bills, all clearly outlined. "Is this accurate, Mr. Carter?" the judge asked Matt directly. Matt's face turned red, eyes flicking nervously to our parents. Well, yes, but it's family, right? She's supposed to help." The judge cut him off gently, yet firmly. "Family obligations do not justify threats or destruction of property, Mr. Carter." My mother's face contorted angrily, and suddenly she rose to her feet, ignoring protocol. "Ellen has always held her money over our heads. She's using this as revenge." The judge's sharp look silenced her immediately. "Ma'am, please sit down. This is a court proceeding, not a family debate." Humiliated, she sat back down, trembling slightly. Yet her words stung deeply. Revenge? Was that how they viewed this, my desperate attempt to protect myself? "I've heard enough," the judge finally declared, voice clear and authoritative. "The evidence against Mr. Carter is convincing. Property destruction and threats cannot be tolerated. I'm ruling in favor of the plaintiff, Ellen Carter. Mr. Carter, restitution of damages totaling $33,000 is ordered, payable by yourself or with family assistance. Additionally, I am issuing a restraining order effective immediately." Matt's mouth fell open in disbelief. My parents stared at me, eyes wide with anger and betrayal. My chest tightened painfully. Victory felt bitter, overshadowed by grief for the family bond irreparably damaged. As we left the courtroom, my mother stopped me sharply in the corridor. Her voice barely contained rage. "Happy now, Ellen. You've humiliated us all." I paused, facing her steadily. "No, Mom. None of this makes me happy." She shook her head slowly, eyes filled with resentment. "I hope it was worth it." My voice softened, aching yet resolute. "It wasn't about winning, Mom. It was about finally being seen respected as a person, not an ATM." She stared blankly, unable or unwilling to understand. Turning sharply, she stormed away, leaving me standing alone in the courthouse hallway, heart aching profoundly. I knew I'd done the right thing, yet victory offered little comfort. Deep down, I had hoped today would spark some understanding from them, some glimmer of acknowledgement or remorse. Instead, it only deepened the chasm. Walking toward the exit, the rain outside now pouring heavily, I felt tears sting my eyes. They blended invisibly with the raindrops as I stepped outside, breathing the cold, cleansing air. Today had forced us all to face a painful truth. My family valued control over love, money over dignity. The reality cut deeply, but acknowledging it fully freed something within me. I had fought for my dignity, and I had won, even though it came at the steepest price imaginable. Stepping into the rain-soaked street, I realized clearly for the first time. Sometimes, standing up for yourself means accepting that you'll stand alone. And finally, I was ready to embrace that truth. Within days, word of the court's decision spread rapidly. Friends, relatives, neighbors, everyone seemed to know, gossip humming through our small community like wildfire. Yet nothing prepared me for the way my own family chose to spin the story. I first realized the extent of their retaliation one morning, scrolling through social media while sipping coffee. My stomach churned violently as I stumbled upon a public post by my mother, shared dozens of times. It breaks my heart to say our daughter, Ellen Carter, has abandoned her family during our time of need. Choosing greed over compassion, she dragged her own brother to court over money. It hurts deeply when a child you raised sacrifices family love for selfish gain. Please keep us in your thoughts. The words blurred on the screen, a mix of shock and betrayal stabbing at my chest. Anger quickly replaced disbelief. I stared at the comments beneath dozens expressing pity and outrage at my supposed selfishness. Friends and distant relatives alike seemed eager to judge without question. Hands shaking, I opened my messages. A wave of hateful texts flooded in harsh accusations, cruel judgments from people who barely knew the truth. I always knew money would change you, Ellen. Your family gave you everything, and this is how you repay them? Each cruel message felt like a physical blow. Yet beneath the hurt, something stronger began to burn. A quiet, determined anger, pushing me to respond. For too long, I'd allowed my family's narrative to shape my life, to control how others viewed me. That had to end now. I took a deep breath, steadied myself, and began typing, carefully choosing every word, pouring honesty into each line. I attached clear, undeniable evidence. Screenshots of financial transfers, bank statements, tuition payments, and even the police report detailing Matt's vandalism. With a racing heartbeat, I finally hit post. The truth was now public, visible to everyone who chose to look beyond the surface. Within minutes, notifications began flooding my phone, comments piling beneath my post. This time, however, the tone was entirely different. I'm so sorry, Ellen. We had no idea. Your strength is inspiring. Your family doesn't deserve you. You did the right thing. It's never easy to break free from toxic relationships. Tears stung my eyes, relief, gratitude, and sadness mixing chaotically inside me. For the first time, people finally saw me clearly. But that validation also confirmed something painful. My family was truly gone. Publicly confronting them felt like burning the final bridge, irreversible yet necessary. Later that afternoon, another knock sounded at my door, softer, hesitant this time. Opening it carefully, I was surprised to see my neighbor Carol, holding a small plate of cookies, a gentle expression on her face. I just wanted to check on you, Ellen, she said warmly, offering the cookies. I saw your post, and I think you're incredibly brave. I'm here if you ever need anything. My throat tightened with unexpected gratitude. Thank you, Carol. You have no idea how much that means to me. She nodded quietly, placing a comforting hand on my shoulder before leaving. Standing there, holding the cookies, warmth slowly filled the emptiness I'd felt for weeks. The support from strangers and neighbors started to mend something broken deep within. As days passed, more gestures followed, notes left on my doorstep, messages of encouragement, small acts of kindness from acquaintances who'd seen the truth and stood beside me. Ironically, in publicly confronting my family, I'd found a new community, a quiet, supportive network of people who genuinely cared, without conditions. Yet, even amid this growing support, loneliness sometimes returned in quiet moments, like an unwanted visitor. Each evening brought with it a fresh ache, the awareness that I had lost something fundamental. The illusion of family I'd so desperately clung to. Late one night, unable to sleep, I found myself staring at old photos still sitting quietly on my shelf, smiling faces masking the dysfunction behind them. My fingers hesitated briefly, then decisively began removing each frame, carefully placing them in a box. Each picture felt symbolic, a piece of a past I no longer belonged to. Sealing the box, I felt both grief and liberation entwined. Maybe one day I'd unpack these memories without pain, but for now, it was time to make room for new chapters. As I lay awake, the moonlight softly illuminating my bedroom, I finally allowed myself to grieve not for the family I'd lost, but for the family I'd never truly had. The tears came slowly, silently, washing away years of buried hurt. Yet beneath the sorrow, something brighter flickered gently, hope. I was finally seeing clearly, stepping bravely into a future where my value wasn't measured by what I could give, but simply by who I was. Justice had been served, but more importantly, I had reclaimed something far more valuable. My voice, my truth, and the courage to live authentically. And tonight, as sleep gently found me at last, I knew with absolute certainty, sometimes the most painful endings open doors to the most beautiful beginnings. I never expected my quiet act of speaking the truth would ripple out so far. Within days, my post had gained momentum, shared widely by friends, neighbors, even strangers. Notifications flooded my phone constantly, an overwhelming yet strangely comforting reminder that I was no longer alone. The story had caught the attention of several popular online communities. Screenshots of my evidence, the financial transfers, the court judgment, Matt's threatening messages circulated rapidly, each repost accompanied by expressions of outrage, empathy, and support. Initially, the attention frightened me. My life had always been private, quietly managed. Suddenly, being thrust into the spotlight felt unnerving. Yet, amid the anxiety, a deeper feeling emerged, one of validation, a powerful reassurance that what I'd endured wasn't acceptable, wasn't normal. One morning, as I sipped my coffee in the gentle sunlight filtering through my kitchen window, my phone buzzed with a notification. Curious, I opened the message, startled to see a request from a well-known social media influencer named Hannah Ellis, who specialized in mental health and toxic family dynamics. Her message was polite yet earnest. "Hi, Ellen. I've seen your story shared everywhere, and I'm deeply moved. Would you be open to a brief conversation on my podcast? Your experience could help countless people find courage to break free from their own toxic relationships. Let me know if you'd be comfortable talking, sending strength your way." My heart pounded as I reread the message. I hesitated briefly, anxiety mixing sharply with excitement. Yet, beneath the nervousness, a voice whispered clearly, "Your voice matters. You can help others." After a deep breath, I typed a careful reply. "Hi, Hannah. I'd be honored. Let's talk." 2 days later, we spoke over a video call recorded for her podcast. Hannah was warm and gentle, her questions thoughtful and compassionate. Sharing my experience aloud felt surprisingly freeing, as if each word lifted another invisible burden from my shoulders. So many people stay silent because they're afraid of losing the family they believe loves them, Hannah gently observed. "What finally gave you the courage to speak out?" I paused, considering my response carefully, emotions raw yet clear. I realized silence wasn't protecting me, it was protecting them. My silence allowed their control to continue unchecked. Speaking out meant reclaiming my dignity, even if it cost me the illusion of family I had. She nodded empathetically. "Do you regret it, exposing everything publicly?" I shook my head slowly, conviction strong in my voice. "No, not at all. Because now people know they're not alone. My experience, as painful as it was, can now help others recognize when they're being manipulated and used. That's worth every uncomfortable moment I've faced. After the episode aired, messages poured in, hundreds of people sharing their own stories of family betrayal, manipulation, and exploitation. Each story mirrored mine in heartbreaking detail, yet each carried gratitude for my bravery. One particular message lingered with me deeply. A young woman named Sarah wrote, "I listened to your story and finally had the courage to stop giving money to my parents, who've treated me exactly as yours did. Your courage gave me mine. Thank you, Ellen, for reminding me I'm worth more than what I can offer them." Tears filled my eyes as I read her words, profound gratitude washing over me. I hadn't anticipated my pain could inspire such healing in others, yet Sarah's message affirmed that my choice to speak out had purpose beyond myself. Still, amid growing positivity, there were darker reminders of the conflict I'd stepped away from. My mother texted just once more, words curt and venomous. "Congratulations, Ellen. You've ruined your family's reputation. Enjoy your fame." This time, however, her words didn't wound me as deeply. Instead, they solidified my resolve. My mother's bitterness only emphasized the toxicity I'd escaped. The days passed, and I gradually settled into a new rhythm, quiet mornings filled with thoughtful reflections, evenings spent responding kindly to supportive messages from strangers who felt increasingly like distant friends. Each message strengthened me, slowly reshaping my self-perception. Carol, my neighbor, checked on me frequently, inviting me for tea, quietly helping me rebuild my shattered sense of community. Our conversations were often simple, yet deeply comforting, reminding me of the uncomplicated kindness that had long been absent from my life. One evening, sitting across from Carol on her cozy porch, she gently squeezed my hand. "You've done something incredible, Ellen. You've turned pain into hope, not just for yourself, but for so many others." I smiled softly, warmth blooming gently in my chest. "I never planned for this," I admitted, "but maybe that's why it feels so right. It wasn't about revenge or anger. It was about truth, about finally letting go of the life I thought I had to accept." As the sun dipped lower, painting the sky in hues of lavender and gold, I felt peace settling deeply within me, a peace born not from the absence of pain, but from accepting it fully and choosing strength over silence. That night, as I lay in bed, a soft sense of purpose enveloped me. My journey had started in betrayal and hurt, but now it moved forward, empowered by empathy, honesty, and newfound courage. In darkness, my phone quietly glowed again. This time, however, the notification brought a smile to my lips, a simple message from Hannah. "Your episode reached over 500,000 listeners. You're changing lives, Ellen." Closing my eyes, I felt hope ignite within me, gently brightening the path ahead. Perhaps this was what true healing felt like. Not erasing past wounds, but transforming them into something powerful, meaningful, and deeply beautiful. 3 months had passed since the chaos of my public revelations. Life settled into a comforting rhythm, quieter yet profoundly richer than ever before. Each morning brought new clarity, a deeper understanding of who I was becoming. A woman defined not by family expectation, but by her own choices, hopes, and dreams. My small house gradually became a haven, a reflection of the peace I cultivated within. The garden, once ruined by Matt's destructive anger, now bloomed vibrantly, carefully replanted by my own hands. New roses stretched gently toward the sky, their petals vivid reminders of resilience. Each evening, after work, I spent time outdoors, tending to the garden or simply sitting quietly, savoring the stillness I'd previously feared. Solitude no longer felt lonely. It felt necessary, nurturing, and empowering. Yet even in this newfound calmness, occasional loneliness lingered softly. I missed companionship, someone with whom to share the small triumphs and quiet beauty of everyday life. My previous relationships had always echoed my family's patterns, conditional, transactional, rooted in imbalance. Now, however, I wanted something real, gentle, authentic. One cool Saturday morning, sunlight filtering warmly through rust-colored autumn leaves, I wandered into the neighborhood bookstore, my new favorite sanctuary. Surrounded by shelves lined with books, the scent of paper and coffee filling the cozy air, I felt contentment blossom inside me. As I browsed quietly, my fingers brushed gently over familiar book covers until my attention caught on a small handcrafted sign, recommended reads for starting fresh. I smiled softly, drawn closer, fingertips tracing titles chosen thoughtfully by the shop owner. Immersed in the calming comfort of possibility, I barely noticed someone approaching until a gentle voice spoke beside me. "I highly recommend that one," he said warmly, nodding toward a slim book about personal transformation. "Helped me through a difficult time." I glanced up, meeting kind eyes, deep brown, sincere, filled with quiet understanding. He offered a gentle smile, not intrusive, simply friendly. "Thank you," I replied softly, returning the smile hesitantly. "It looks promising." "I'm Lucas," he said lightly, extending a hand respectfully, warmth radiating from his quiet confidence. "Sorry if I interrupted your browsing." "Not at all," I assured him quickly, surprising myself with my willingness to engage. "I'm Ellen." Recognition briefly flickered in his eyes, gentle but respectful. "Ellen Carter? Your stories helped a lot of people. It definitely resonated with me." My cheeks warmed slightly, embarrassment mixed with genuine appreciation. "That means a lot," I admitted softly. "It's still strange, knowing so many people have seen such a personal part of my life." Lucas nodded thoughtfully, choosing his words carefully. "I think your honesty showed a lot of strength. That kind of vulnerability takes courage. Not many people are brave enough to face their truths publicly." Something about his sincerity, his quiet calm, gently eased the tension I'd carried for months. Conversation flowed easily between us, natural and comfortable, as though we'd known each other far longer than a few shared minutes in a bookstore. We talked about books, life, and changed small details, gradually unveiling deeper commonalities. Lucas, I learned, was a counselor who specialized in family relationships, helping others navigate the very situations I'd lived through. His work intrigued me, made me feel seen without judgment. "You must hear difficult stories every day," I said quietly, glancing down at the book I'd chosen. "Doesn't that weigh on you?" "It used to," he admitted gently, eyes thoughtful. "But every person who opens up reminds me how resilient we can be. Our stories don't have to define us negatively. They can inspire and empower if we let them." His words settled deeply into my heart, resonating profoundly. For the first time in months, I allowed myself to truly relax in someone else's presence. Lucas's genuine warmth eased the edges of loneliness I'd grown used to, softly inviting me to trust again. When we finally parted ways after exchanging phone numbers and promises to talk again soon, I stepped out of the bookstore feeling lighter, renewed. Autumn leaves swirled gently around me, golden and crimson whispers celebrating this quiet yet profound turning point in my life. That evening, curled comfortably in my favorite chair with the book Lucas recommended, I felt a sense of peace settle deep inside, an acknowledgement of how far I'd come, how deeply I'd grown. My journey had been painful, yet without that pain, I might never have discovered the strength and freedom now gently reshaping my life. My phone buzzed softly, a gentle interruption. Smiling to myself, I saw Lucas's simple message appear. "It was wonderful meeting you, Ellen. I look forward to hearing your thoughts about the book and perhaps learning more of your story in person. Take care." Warmth spread gently through my chest, healing parts of me still tender from past wounds. I replied simply, honestly, "I'd love that, Lucas. Thank you." Outside, night softly descended, stars quietly appearing above. My past no longer felt like chains holding me back. Instead, it had become stepping stones, guiding me toward the future I now welcomed with open arms and an open heart. As I drifted gently toward sleep later that night, one clear, beautiful truth filled my thoughts. Letting go of the past wasn't losing myself. It was finally, truly coming home. Weeks gently passed, and Lucas slowly became a comforting presence in my life. Our connection deepened naturally through shared conversations, quiet laughter, and the kind of genuine understanding I'd always longed for, yet never quite found. He was patient, never pushing too hard, as if intuitively sensing the delicate boundaries of trust I'd built around myself. One quiet Saturday evening, Lucas invited me for dinner at his favorite restaurant and intimate place overlooking the river. The soft glow of candlelight cast warm shadows across the table as we talked, the conversation shifting effortlessly from trivial daily events to deeper truths we'd begun gently exploring. "Do you ever regret sharing your story publicly?" Lucas asked softly, watching me closely, not prying, simply offering me space to share if I wanted to. I hesitated briefly, thoughtful. Sometimes, when strangers make harsh assumptions without really knowing me, but mostly, I feel grateful. It forced me to confront my reality honestly and helped others find courage, too. His eyes softened with understanding. "Honesty like yours isn't easy. It's vulnerable, frightening. But the way you chose to speak up, that's true bravery." A gentle warmth filled my chest, surprising yet welcome. "It didn't feel brave at the time," I admitted quietly. "Mostly, I felt hurt, scared, and alone." Lucas reached across the table, lightly resting his hand over mine, a careful, comforting touch. "Being brave doesn't mean you stop feeling fear. It just means you don't let fear control you. You took control of your own narrative." His words echoed powerfully inside me, validating emotions I'd struggled to articulate. His presence, his understanding, provided reassurance I'd rarely experienced. After dinner, we walked slowly along the riverbank, beneath stars shimmering gently in the dark sky. The cool air held a calming quietness, comfortable and safe. Lucas walked beside me, close yet respectful, giving space but silently communicating his steady presence. "Can I tell you something personal?" Lucas asked, voice gentle yet tinged with vulnerability. "Of course," I replied, curious yet cautious, heart beating slightly faster. He paused, gazing toward the river thoughtfully before speaking. "My family wasn't so different from yours. Maybe that's why your story resonated deeply with me. My father was controlling, always made love conditional. It took me years to realize I wasn't responsible for his approval or happiness." Surprise flickered gently inside me, followed by quiet compassion. "I had no idea," I murmured softly. "You seem so balanced, so secure in yourself." He smiled faintly, eyes warm. "It took a long time, lots of therapy and painful honesty, but eventually I learned that family isn't always the people we're born into. Sometimes family is who we choose, people who see and respect us genuinely." His words settled profoundly inside me. "Do you still struggle with trusting people?" "Sometimes," he admitted openly. "But I've also learned to recognize genuine connection, like the one I feel with you." My pulse quickened gently, warmth flooding my cheeks. "I feel that too," I whispered, barely audible, voice vulnerable yet honest. Lucas stopped walking, turning to face me directly beneath the soft moonlight. He reached out, lightly brushing a strand of hair from my face, eyes deeply sincere. "I want you to know, Ellen, I don't expect anything from you other than who you truly are. You don't have to earn care, love, or respect." "Not with me." Tears blurred my vision softly, emotions gently overflowing. I've spent my whole life feeling like I had to earn every ounce of affection, I admitted shakily, voice quiet but filled with relief. It's still hard to believe someone could accept me just like this. Lucas's gentle gaze never wavered, his voice soft yet deeply certain. You deserve love exactly as you are, not because of what you give, but because of who you are. I closed my eyes briefly, absorbing his words, letting them gently seep into the parts of my heart still wounded. When I opened them again, meeting Lucas's steady, tender gaze, I felt safe, seen finally, understood. He stepped forward, carefully, respectfully, drawing me gently into a warm embrace. I relaxed against him, allowing myself the rare luxury of vulnerability without fear. His heartbeat was steady beneath my cheek, a calming rhythm softly matching mine. In that quiet, peaceful moment beside the softly murmuring river, healing gently enveloped me. Lucas didn't fix my wounds. He simply offered space, patience, and genuine care as I healed myself. And perhaps, I realized deeply, that was exactly what love was meant to be. Thank you, I whispered softly into the cool night air, words heartfelt yet simple. Lucas tightened his embrace gently, reassurance clear in his quiet strength. Thank you, he murmured back, voice gentle and sincere, for trusting me. We stayed like that quietly, beneath the comforting silence of stars, both aware we'd crossed a threshold, one built not on obligation, but genuine choice, mutual respect, and true connection. That night, returning home, I lay awake for a long while, Lucas's quiet words echoing gently within my heart, filling spaces I'd believed permanently empty. Healing, I realized profoundly, wasn't simply about erasing past pain. It was about embracing new experiences, allowing them to gently reshape and restore us. And tonight, finally, I felt ready to embrace that healing, fully trusting, hopeful, and profoundly grateful for the gentle love quietly guiding me toward becoming whole again. Winter had quietly settled over the city, blanketing everything in soft layers of snow. Life felt peaceful, gentle, and earned calm after the storms I'd weathered. Lucas remained by my side, a constant source of strength, love, and understanding. My world felt secure, healing well underway. Then, one quiet afternoon, the peace was disrupted. I was sitting quietly in my living room, wrapped in a warm blanket, when my phone vibrated sharply on the coffee table. Glancing down, my heart skipped. My mother's number flashed brightly, insistently. For a moment, old anxieties stirred painfully inside my chest. Taking a slow, steadying breath, I answered quietly, firmly prepared. Hello? Ellen. My mother's voice was strained, colder than usual, yet strangely vulnerable. We need to talk. What's wrong? I asked, voice carefully neutral, heart cautiously guarded. She paused, an awkward silence stretching painfully. Things have gotten difficult. Financially, we're in trouble. Your father and I, we need your help. Your brothers aren't in a position to support us, and we're at risk of losing the house again. My stomach twisted involuntarily at the old, familiar scenario playing out once more. Yet this time, clarity sharpened my perspective. The script hadn't changed, only my role had. Mom, I began softly, compassion clear but resolve unwavering. I'm sorry to hear you're struggling, but I can't help financially anymore. Silence followed, heavy and charged. Her voice returned sharper, edged with disbelief. Ellen, this isn't the time to be petty. Family is family. We raised you. I sighed gently, sadness mingling with quiet resolve. You did raise me, and I'm grateful for the good things you gave me. But loving someone isn't supposed to be about financial obligations. I spent my whole life believing I had to buy your love, your approval, but that was never real love. I understand that now. She scoffed bitterly. Is this Lucas talking, or you? You've let strangers influence you, Ellen. You've forgotten your own blood. No, Mom. I replied firmly, surprising myself with the calm certainty in my voice. This is me. I've learned to value myself without needing your approval. Love isn't conditional or transactional. If helping financially is the only way to be accepted in this family, then I have to accept that I don't belong there anymore. My mother's voice trembled slightly, rage mixing with desperation. You're abandoning your family. You'll regret this one day. The words stung briefly, yet my clarity remained strong. I'm sorry you feel that way, I replied quietly. But for the first time in my life, I'm choosing myself, my dignity, my happiness over your expectations. I sincerely hope things improve for you, but this isn't my responsibility anymore. She was quiet a long moment, the silence carrying decades of unspoken tension, hurt, and misunderstandings. Finally, with a resigned bitterness, she responded softly, You've made your choice, Ellen. Don't expect to ever be welcomed home again. I understand, I replied gently. No bitterness, only peaceful acceptance. Take care, Mom. As the call ended, a quiet relief flooded through me. Sadness lingered, a gentle acknowledgement of loss. But beneath that sadness, I felt strength, maturity, and a profound sense of freedom. Lucas found me moments later, quietly wrapping his arms around my shoulders as he sensed my quiet reflection. Are you okay? I nodded gently, leaning into him, voice soft yet steady. I'm better than okay. It hurt, but I needed that closure. This time I stood firm, not out of anger, but out of respect for myself. He kissed my forehead gently, pride clear in his warm embrace. You've come so far, Ellen. You should be proud. Looking up into his sincere, gentle eyes, I finally felt completely free, a woman no longer chained to expectations or conditional love, but firmly rooted in respect, dignity, and genuine self-worth. Today marked not just an ending, but the truest beginning of my life. One I'd finally, fully reclaimed as my own. Spring arrived softly, breathing new life into the world. Flowers bloomed vibrantly in my garden, symbolic reminders of resilience, growth, and healing. I felt reborn alongside them. A woman reshaped gently by trials, tears, and finally, truth. The past months had transformed me profoundly. I no longer felt guilt or fear when choosing myself. Instead, I felt strength, pride, and peace. Each decision now was guided by genuine self-respect, no longer overshadowed by others' demands or expectations. Lucas remained beside me, our relationship blossoming beautifully, built on mutual respect, unconditional care, and sincere honesty. With him, love wasn't a burden. It was gentle, reassuring, genuine. It felt like finally finding home within another person, not because I needed to be completed, but because I was already whole. One evening, sitting quietly beside Lucas on our porch beneath a gentle twilight sky, I smiled softly, savoring the simple beauty surrounding us. You know, I said quietly, breaking the peaceful silence gently. For the first time in my life, I feel genuinely happy just being me. Lucas's eyes softened with pride and warmth. That's because you finally see yourself clearly. You realize your value doesn't depend on what you do for others, but simply on who you are. I squeezed his hand gently, feeling deep gratitude and quiet joy bloom within my heart. Exactly. Looking into the quiet horizon, I felt profoundly free. My painful past no longer defined me. Instead, it had shaped me, strengthened me, guided me gently toward this peaceful moment of genuine self-love and fulfillment. In that quiet, perfect evening, beneath a sky softly darkening into starlit night, one powerful truth resonated clearly within me. Losing the illusion of conditional love had given me the greatest gift of all, the freedom and courage to finally, fully love myself. And in doing so, I'd found not just happiness, but my truest self reborn, complete, and ready to embrace the life I'd always deserved.